Thanks very much for the opportunity to get to speak to you tonight. My name is Ed Sayers. I'm the Senior Advisor of the Pet Industry Advisory Council, and I am the former President of the ASPCA from 2003 to 2013, which is to say I am the one that brought Sarah McLachlan commercials to your living room. I've spent the past 41 years working for the welfare of animals, and at the ASPCA we work with the Humane Society of the United States and the pet industry leaders to develop improved standards for commercially bred puppies. That collaboration produced a set of standards that has now been submitted to the USDA by Humane Society, ASPCA, and the pet industry is working to support those efforts. My message has not changed. Always make adoption your first option. But 40 years ago, Americans acquired 4 to 5 million dogs per year, and animal shelters euthanized 12 to 15 million dogs per year, 3 times the demand. During my first 20 years managing a small shelter in New Jersey, we had to euthanize 50,000 dogs and cats due to overpopulation. I made those euthanasia decisions. I understand the tragedy of that situation more vividly than anyone can imagine. However, today the situation has changed dramatically. In 2016, Americans will acquire 8 million dogs, and animal shelters will euthanize approximately 1.2 million. Adoption should still always be your first option, but the demand for puppies and dogs is now 7 times the population of homeless dogs that are at risk for euthanasia. At the ASPCA, I authorized a dozen raids to rescue and rehabilitate over 2,500 puppies and dogs from substandard puppy mills. Not one of those facilities was USDA licensed breeders, and none of those puppies were headed for a pet store. As president of the ASPCA, I said a lot of negative things about commercial breeders, licensed or not. Then someone asked me if I've ever visited a licensed commercial breeder, and the honest answer was no, I had not. Now I know better. After I left the ASPCA, I visited many. I found high standard kennels and well-educated breeders. I found hardworking professionals who are dedicated to caring for their dogs and producing healthy puppies for their customers. If someone testifies today about the horrible conditions at commercial breeders, please just ask them when they visited a USDA licensed breeder. I thought I knew it all, and I realized I was wrong. If we want to eliminate puppy mills, we should not ban responsible breeders who are not puppy mills. Pet stores are one of the safest and most regulated sources to purchase a new puppy. With a ban, you eliminate the responsible breeders. There are communities that have passed regulations, not bans, to allow responsible breeders to sell puppies and eliminate puppy mills from their market. Pet sale bans are an emotional reaction to a complex problem. Bans have no effect on the elimination of puppy mills. Regulations address the concerns of all constituents.
That's time, unfortunately, Mr. Sayers. Any comments or questions from council?
Just real quick.
Yes, Councilor Navarro.
How many? Just out of curiosity, puppy mills. How many have you seen, and where in your travels? I guess.
Well, both taking animals in from puppy mills while I ran shelters in both New Jersey and in San Francisco SPCA, and then at the ASPCA in New York, and then on site for probably 10 or 11 puppy mill situations that are, again, substandard is a word to remember. There is no standard. It's a substandard criminal operation, and you're brought in by law enforcement, and it's absolutely atrocious. It just has nothing to do with what you see at a licensed USDA breeder, and certainly the elite ones that are chosen by the minios.
What states have crafted regulations, or are there any that have really kind of surgically, I guess, worked with regulations of puppy mills? You might have.
Well, Missouri was mentioned. We did, Humane Society of the United States and ASPCA, when I was the president there, we did a ballot initiative in Missouri for puppy mill and better breeder standards. Ballot initiative passed. It was overturned by the governor, but then the state stepped in and increased regulations and increased enforcement, which is really one of the more important sides of it. And now Missouri has one of the top criteria for breeder standards. But these new USDA standards that we're putting in with HSUS, ASPCA, and the industry are even above the standards that we're seeing around the state. We all agree, you know, standards have to improve and puppy mills have to be eliminated. It's just the ban doesn't hit that. Regulations on sourcing will hit that, and you can do that in your community.
Councilmember Cubie? have one,
Sarah,
too.
so who do you work for? Because I know it was a big news event when the head of ASPCA went to work for sort of the other side. So can you tell me who you work for right now?
Yeah, it's the Pet Joint Advisory Council, and it was kind of controversial. And I spent 40 years of my life with the animal population that enters shelters, which is 6 to 8% of dogs and cats enter shelters every year. And the way I looked at it, there's another 90%, and that's really what I wanted to put my time into, to make sure the standards for those animals in any kind of commercial settings get some of my attention. And the industry obviously wanted an animal welfare person on board to do that.
Can you tell me who funds the organization that you work for? Where the funding comes from?
The funding are members, various members of the industry, whether they're manufacturers or retailers or distributors, Petco, PetSmart, they're all members of Pet Joint Advisory
Would you
Council.
say that they have interest in the continuation of large-scale commercial breeding?
They don't have interest in large-scale commercial breeding that's going to be detrimental to the animals. I mean, that's kind of why I was brought in, is to raise animal welfare standards. I mean, that's what the Advisory Council is about. There's no way to continue a business that has, substandard or inhumane animals. It doesn't make sense.
Councilmember Arredondo Savage?
I appreciate you coming and sharing. I was just curious, in your capacity, obviously, with your new position, you said you were actually visiting some different breeders. So, I mean, what instigated that? What was the reasoning to do that? Is it just trying to collect data, or were there specific ones that you targeted?
I went to an industry conference because we had been working on these breeder standards between the industry, and when I was at ASPCA, and I was invited to one of the industry conferences, and I talked to one of the larger distributors, the Hunt Corporation, and I was invited to see their operation, and I had, quite honestly, a bias against them. But I decided to go out and see what it was all about, and turned out I was incredibly wrong. And the sophistication of their operation is unbelievable. And then from there, I went out and began to go out on the ground and visit some of the breeders they use, and then breeders from other distributors as well. And it's just, I appreciate, I grew up in a family of show breeders who would never sell to a pet store, and my grandfather bred dogs, and uncles and dad, but there are people that choose a commercial route, and it doesn't mean that they don't have the same humane standards and care for those animals. They just choose, a pet quality commercial endeavor with their puppies than a more elite kind of show breeder. And I was not aware of that. All I saw was show breeders who were phenomenal, as she described, and puppy mills. I saw the two ends of the spectrum, and I never actually knew anything about someone who did it professionally and responsibly.
Thank you.
It was an eye-opener.